Hey everyone, it's Mr. Hollywood, and today I'll give a whole video of why The Long Walk is my favorite movie of 2025, and just one of my all-time favorite movies. Now, before I give you my whole thoughts on The Long Walk, feel free to share what your thoughts on The Long Walk are down below in the comments. And for those people who have not seen Long Walk, I am going to give a lot more spoilers for this video. So if you haven't seen it, this video is definitely not going to be for you. However, once you see The Long Walk, I do recommend checking it out. But anyways, The Long Walk tells a story about 50 boys who are probably like in their late teens, early 20s, who participate in an event called The Long Walk. And it is basically a dystopian future. And The Long Walk is a event where you have to go above 3 miles per hour, and if you drop below 3 miles per hour 3 times, you die. Which, when I actually first saw the trailer for The Long Walk, I did not realize it was going to be this brutal. I actually avoided a lot of the marketing, which is part of the reason why I think I was a little bit more surprised, because at the beginning I don't think they announced that you die if you get eliminated. So then when the first death happened, I was like, oh, this is going to be a brutal ride. And I think the movie did a great job of setting the foundation, establishing the rules for the event. And I think the movie did a great job of giving the characters emotion and personality, where you care about almost all of the characters, which I think is important if you're going to tell a story like this. Now, I'm going to compare this slightly to a movie, well, in the franchise that actually Francis Lawrence, the director of this, did actually not direct, The Hunger Games. Which is funny, because he directed a few of the Hunger Games movies, but he didn't direct the first one, which is the only one I've seen. And I'll be very clear, I liked the first Hunger Games quite a bit. I thought it was a very good movie. However, one thing I think The Long Walk clearly did better, I think The Long Walk did a lot of things better than Hunger Games. Like, I like Hunger Games, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it comes close to The Long Walk. And I think one of the main reasons why I like The Long Walk more than The Hunger Games is in The Hunger Games, you're only really cheering for Katniss Everdeen. At least I feel that way. Now, other people who've maybe read the books or who are more invested, maybe it's a different story, and that's totally fair enough. But as for me, Katniss Everdeen was one of the only characters, and arguably the only character, who I actually wanted to see win. Obviously, knowing that there were sequels, obviously I knew she was gonna win. And unlike The Hunger Games, in The Long Walk, I cared about almost all the characters, not just Cooper Hoffman's character of, I believe it was Raymond Garrity, not just David Johnson's character of Pete, but even some supporting characters. Even one of the characters who at the beginning of the movie was someone who I really hated their guts because they were not very nice, but even then, I believe it was Stebbins was their last name. Even then, you see how they find their humanity, and by the end, you actually do feel emotion when he stabbed himself, and I thought that was very emotional. I also love how The Long Walk incorporated Mark Hamill as the villain, aka the Major. Now, his role isn't like small, like you see him introduce, or like explain the rules at the beginning of the movie, and then you see him shoot the starting gun. However, like, he doesn't have like that much screen time. He's definitely a supporting character. He's definitely not a background character, because I do think the movie actually did a great job of making you feel his presence, even when the other characters are talking to each other. And I do love how they showed why Garrity would feel a lot of resentment towards the Major. And I think it makes a lot more sense of why he'd want to sign up, because another thing I think is worth mentioning is that these people applied to be in this event. It's definitely a very deadly event. However, a lot of these characters are in need of something. They don't have enough money. Maybe they feel like they don't have as much to live for. This is also a dystopian future, so it is a very corrupt society, and the winner gets a big wish. And I think as you see throughout the movie, it makes perfect sense why a lot of these people would want to participate. But for Garrity, who is definitely the main character, I mean, or you could argue the co-lead along with Pete, but at the same time, I would say Cooper Hoffman. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Cooper Hoffman's character had the most screen time, followed by David Johnson's character. However, I would say they are still co-leads. However, the narrative definitely does focus on his resentment towards the Major. The first scene you see is his mom driving him to the event, and then you see flashbacks of the Major killing his dad because his dad definitely broke some rules for society, and the Major gave him a chance to go to jail or to get executed, and his dad chose to get executed. So I think it makes perfect sense why Garrity would be out for revenge. And I think the movie did a great job of making you despise the Major. But yeah, the Major was a great villain, and I thought Mark Hamill did a great job, and I do think this is easily his best acting performance of all time. I really do hope he gets some Oscar consideration, even though, because this movie isn't as popular as a lot of other movies, it's probably not going to happen, but it would have been nice. However, yeah, I think the movie did a great job of making you despise the Major. And also, I think the movie, while you definitely need to suspend a bit of disbelief, I do think the movie is still very grounded for The Long Walk, where you definitely see characters having their limitations, and you definitely see the hypotheticals of, what if this happens? What do you do? What if this happens? And I think the movie did a great job of portraying that. And, I mean, the acting, the directing, it was just all beautiful. It made a Long Walk where for most of the movies the characters are just talking very compelling because you felt the drama. Even if a character didn't die, I feel like you feel the danger, where it feels like any character could die any given minute. And I think the movie did a fantastic job. Now, I think a topic that has been discussed a bit is how this compares to the book. And I'm going to be very honest, I'm not much of a book reader, and I'm not someone who really judges a movie based on how faithful it is to the book. However, a few days ago I actually listened to the Long Walk audiobook. And, in my opinion, I actually think one thing the movie did a lot better than the book is I think the movie did make you feel a lot more emotion for the characters. And before I read the audiobook, I definitely knew some of the outcomes, but I still felt a lot more tension in the film than the book. I mean, I actually overall liked the book for the most part. Now, maybe if I read it, maybe it would have been a different experience, but all I did was listen to the audiobook. However, and maybe you can say I'm a biased movie fan, which is fair enough. I mean, like I said, I'm not much of a book reader. I definitely like the movie more than the book. At the same time, though, I also usually don't like comparing movies books, and TV shows, and video games. I really kind of like to separate them. But if I had to choose, I like the Long Walk movie more than the book. So yeah, I mean, I know that they definitely changed a lot from the movie, from the book. However, for me, I didn't mind all the changes. So yeah. Now, the ending is a point where I think some people, and I would say maybe most people, are very on board with the ending. However, I'm also aware some people didn't love how the movie ended. Now, where do I stand with the ending? I mean, given that this is my favorite movie of the year, I adored the ending. Because I really feel like if I didn't like the ending that much, then the title for my favorite movie of the year probably would have went to another movie like Mission Impossible Final Reckoning or One Battle After Another. But yeah, the ending for me very much so worked. And I think it's worth addressing why the ending could be definitely very controversial. I think it's because with the ending, obviously part of the themes that the movie tried to tackle throughout the film is that Pete feels like you should, if you win the big reward, you should try to do something with it. And I agree. And obviously Garrity is a lot more out for revenge for the Major. However, I feel like once you see their friendship form, and once you learn about Pete's backstory, and knowing that Garrity is probably the best friend he's ever had, once, spoiler, Garrity dies because he wanted Pete to win, and he felt like Pete had more reasons to live, because like obviously Garrity in the event, Garrity is one of the only people that still has a close relationship with his family, let alone family at all. And obviously, he also bumps into his mom towards the end of the long walk, and you definitely see how he almost lost focus. And I'm gonna be very honest, I almost thought he was gonna die once he almost got distracted by his mom, which he didn't. For me, I could totally see why Garrity would have wanted to sacrifice his winnings for Pete. And then Garrity died. Pete felt very depressed. And I actually think it makes a lot of sense, though, why Pete would be very depressed. Because obviously, yes, his brother in arms, essentially, for the entire movie just died right in front of him. And also, the fact that he suffered through this entire long walk, the distance ended up being over 300 miles by the end of the film. And also, because, you saw all these brutal deaths throughout the film, or in Pete's case, the walk. I definitely don't expect your head to be clear. And his head definitely wasn't clear. And the final shot was him just walking in a distance. And then, in typical Stephen King, it definitely had a bit of an ambiguous ending. Now, some people can interpret the ending different ways. Maybe he died on his walk back. Or maybe he survived and just lived out his life, probably depressed, or who knows, maybe he could have done some with his life. Now, for me, I definitely don't need a Long Walk sequel. I definitely think the film ended perfectly with him walking, and I think that did cap off a beautifully made film. So yeah, the ending, plain and simple, the ending of The Long Walk worked. I think you would think it's pretty obvious that Garrity was going to win. So I was actually surprised that Pete ended up winning. Now, I really wanted both of them to win. I think a lot of people who watched it wanted both of them to win. And, I don't want to say, because even though I thought Pete was a great character, and I don't know which character I actually liked more between Pete and Garrity. I feel similar about both. But yeah, overall, I thought the movie was definitely very sad. It was sad throughout the film, not just when Garrity died, but when you see all these other kids. Some of them are kids, but even the ones who aren't, they're still only in their early 20s. They're probably not that much older than I am right now, which, currently I'm 17, and a lot of these characters are probably, ranging from, 19 to 22, if I had to guess. But yeah, the ending was very sad. The whole movie was just very sad, but I think it was beautifully made. So yeah, The Long Walk rules. It is my favorite movie of the year, one of my favorites of the decades, and just one of my favorites of all time. Now, thanks for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts on The Long Walk down below in the comments. And next week, The Running Man comes out. I cannot wait to see The Running Man. Now, thanks for watching, and peace out.